Welcome to the Awaken Organization.
Welcome to the Awakened Organization. And we have a laughing Ann Catherine who can't get off her own mic. This is total mayhem here. I'm Peter.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we have the honor to meet with genuinely awesome business owners, mostly B Corps. And today's are some of the OGs, the original gangsters of B Corps, Salt Spring Coffee out in British Columbia.
We covered everything from their origin story and how they've been doing this for 26 years, how they met, and everything from the challenges of being a sustainability-oriented company and the increased costs of production to do it in a both socially and environmentally sustainable way, and also leading the pack, helping form what are a lot of the B Corp policies today as one of the first certified B Corps in Canada. Is a very wide-ranging and interesting conversation with two lovely founders of a coffee company that is a staple up in Western Canada.
They were cool before it was cool. So yeah, it's great. Imagine being certified fair trade in 1998 and all the wisdom they've gained since. So definitely tune in.
Rob and Mickey, thanks for joining us. So you guys have been doing, well, coffee for a long time, but sustainability for a long time. Before it was cool, way before it was cool, before people knew what it was. I noticed fair trade is an early certification, B Corp early adopters. Can you just talk to us a little bit about kind of what got you started in the sustainability arena? And, you know, this is pre-internet, a lot of, you know, finding resources was much harder, and just love to hear kind of how you brought that into your entrepreneurship from an early timeline.
Well, I can start. It actually probably goes back to the 60s, actually, when I moved just back quite a ways. I was born in New Westminster, and I moved to Texada Island in 1966 with my family. And we bought a little local store in Gillies Bay there. And at that time, there was a lot of people that never, didn't want to go to Vietnam. So they were hiding in the corners of British Columbia, and Texada Island being one of them. And with our family store, we got to meet a lot of really cool people that were hanging out in the woods there. And my mother was, very sort of true blue Christian and would sort of feed anybody and help anybody. So we would invite all these alternative people for dinner. And so at a very young age, I got influenced quite heavily by the counterculture. So then, I was sort of influenced in a great way, I thought. And moving forward a few years, Robbyn was on a trip up to Texada from California via some friends to visit some friends.
San Francisco, by the way.
Yeah, there you go. San Francisco. So we met in 1973, and sort of there's an alternative country boy and then an urban country girl meet, and we both had values that we've carried on forever, and then so that's sort of really the core of where we started with our caring about things. And then just, we spent our life together. And then, so once again, fast forwarding again, into the early 90s, when sort of got an interest in coffee. I mean, we had all the way along sort of personally drank good coffee. But then, we met. Let me go back a little bit further. Robbyn took me back to San Francisco. We went to Cafe Trieste in Little Italy. And, that was where I first got influenced by drinking coffee. And then, all through our life, we started drinking coffee, sourcing it as much as we could. Used to buy bulk bags of organic beans from Horizon Cooperative all through the 70s and 80s, and then when the 90s came along, visiting Robbyn's mother in Eugene, Oregon, we got influenced by, home coffee roasting. So we bought a little coffee roaster, brought it home for our own purposes. And then that's where the idea of Salt Spring Coffee sparked in the early 90s. And
Wow.
then, we just sort of carried there's the quality of coffee and then the values piece, just because of who we are, our upbringing, and all the, couple of decades before, how we kind of put that into Salt Spring Coffee.
how organic was just part of our DNA as much as possible. And it just brought to mind when you asked how the beginning, how did we get into the organic, I guess, fair trade as well. And it just brought to mind, we just saw this movie called Dark Waters recently, and it's about the how Teflon, I'll just quickly say, it's about how Teflon has all these chemicals in it, and people are just finding out about that in, what was it, Mickey? And then when did they bring
Early
it to
90s.
the public? Yeah,
Well, it was actually the early
90s.
2000s that actually became quite public.
Okay, so I said to Mickey with this, how did people not know about Teflon until the 90s when I knew about it? When I came to Canada, I knew about it in the 70s, not to use Teflon. So back to your question, how did we bring this concern about the planet, into our company? So it came with us as we started the company, and it just came naturally of choices we made.
I guess a lot of it too is not really trusting the big players. I mean, you kind of look back even to the 50s, like Mad Men is sort of a perfect example of, a marketing agency that's actually, trying to make cigarettes sexy, and using doctors as an example of how to, to sell products. So, I mean, Rob and I have always been very skeptical about those things right from the very beginning. So that's also part of it. And there's got to be a better way. And a lot of things, products were called natural, like natural foods, back in the day when there was, very little packaging, everything's in bulk and, so that was also something that really happened. And then all through sort of the 70s, 80s, 90s, it got more and more, the big players get involved and they package things and then buying up the small, all of that stuff, sort of the large corporate things and not really trusting, and it leads into what Robin was saying there about, DuPont was making $1 billion a year in profit on Teflon alone, and it's killing people. So anyway, don't want to dive too deep there, but those are some of the DNA of Robin and our feeling about things too. And that's been sort of our anchor and core all along, is just, we got to do things right, clean, honest, and fair.
Has that always worked out best for the business, or have there ever been times where those two things were in tension?
No, it's always been kind of our North Star, and some things, we just can't compromise on, and it, as I sort of said earlier, I mean, it's hard enough being in business, but when you start adding all these multiple layers of care, we actually prefer to call it care because, you kind of care about our supply chain, people, all of that. It makes it more difficult. So it has been a challenge, no question, but 26 years later, we're still here. Has it been easy? By no means. I don't think there's ever been one year that you could say, that was an easy one. It's never been the case, and now it's even been more challenging the last 2 years. So it's tough. There's no question, but, we're not going to give up on what we believe in just for the sake of making more money. It just doesn't work. I'd just leave before that, but I'm not going to leave. The mission's not over yet.
And hopefully, and people say they just can trust Salt Spring Coffee, and Salt Spring Coffee stands for all these values that we hold in our DNA, hold dearly.
It's one of those things too, if you kind of go back to sort of the natural food industry, it's sort of like the basis of, I'm not sure about Whole Foods, but I know in Vancouver, there's a company called Capers. It was started by a guy named Russell Precious, who was, old school kind of natural foods guy. And when he wanted to become a vendor, that they vetted the vendor, it's kind of, you get audited as being a customer or a vendor to the store. And when you go in there, they vetted the product. I know it's good. I don't have to read the labels. So it's kind of, that's how people, as Robin was referring to, how they can somewhat trust us. They know we're there. We have, the certifications to verify it all, but, we can't become a trusted company, and that's quite important when so many aren't these days. Yeah. And even if they say they are, then they're not necessarily that true. And there's, depending how big your marketing budget is or your spin budget.
The greenwashing. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
I feel like, as I'm somewhat new, so Jeremy's been certified recently as a B Corp. We have recently applied For myself, I own a purpose-driven marketing agency here in Ottawa. Application process is clearly in the mail. It's now about 1.5 years to get certified, but things were probably a little different in 2010. Can you tell us about like B Corp certification and what drove you to that at the time?
Well, it's kind of like we were almost waiting for them to show up because, we had been doing the work, as I sort of alluded to earlier, forever. And it was sort of just part of the things that we did. We didn't, another thing I like about B Corp is that it sort of gives you guidelines, a toolkit to go bit. They've changed several times since, they've started. I mean, we were one of the very first in Canada. Can't remember the first 2 or 3, I think, in Canada to do it. So, at the very early on, it's like when we first started with fair trade too, they said, you have to report what you sell. Well, how do we report that? They had no tool. We had to make our own. So it was almost like that with B Corp, is that say, well, here's what you do. And then you do something. Oh no, we're going to do it this way now. I'm not going to do it this way now. So that, they changed the reporting structure, which means your number, your score changed. So it's quite an evolution there. But, and I was actually very critical of them. I was pretty hard on them initially because this doesn't make any sense. Why are you doing this? And certain things they put in there, it's like one size fits all, but we don't use water in our production. Why are we getting, it's heavily weighted for water usage. Well, we don't use water. I don't want to be disqualified because, we can't score water usage, things like that. So it was pretty hard on them. And then, oh yeah, you're right. We got to fix this, So anyway, it was good though. But what I do like the fact to say that it gives us a much better goal now, and the audit process, and we have a woman that works for us now that manages all of that, and we've weaved it into what what our goals are moving forward. So it's become much better both internally and externally. But it was at the beginning it was just like, oh, finally something's here to help us. So it wasn't it didn't take much to convince us to do it.
Yeah, it sounds like you said, you were waiting for them. You were already, where do I sign up by the time they came around?
Yes, yeah, exactly. But any certification, they have their challenges, and nothing is perfect. But it's sort of what there is, and it's better than nothing. And I'm still somewhat critical of them, but it's better than nothing, and it helps us, and it kind of helps rally, for everybody to rally around it. And then internally, we have work to do to make that happen too. So, and still a lot of people don't quite understand what it is. I mean, consumers don't really necessarily get it. It's also one of those things you pay this money, to be a, part of the program with them, but nobody gets it. So it's like you're paying this money, but we're not making money out of it. People aren't rushing to beat our door down to buy our product because we're B Corp. So there's that part too. So, in some ways, when is this going to turn around and people are going to, we're, organic certified, fair trade certified, B Corp certified, and, each one of those. And so there's a lot of work to do on consumers actually paying for it. People like to hear about it, but they don't want to pay for it. That's the challenge.
Interesting. So in terms of the current, maybe sustainability climate in general, how are you feeling about the direction that things have gone, fast forward to 2022, there's 5,000 B Corps, there's a hand, it's 1% for the planet. There's a bunch of other types of certifications and groupings, collectives of initiatives, and it's a different world. Just love to hear your take, having kind of been in the space for so many years, just what your sense is of today.
Well, I think in a lot of ways, I guess depends on how much disposable income people have. That's another challenge right now because, with inflation and fuel prices and all of that, and a lot of people, their disposable income hasn't really necessarily kept up pace. But I do think that generally people are caring more about it, and they want to buy more local products. They want to, work with a company that does care, and they do want to support, sustainability and initiatives. So I do think that is on the increase. I'm not a big one for statistics and saying it's increased by X. I just, kind of know more what I read or hear or sort of within the industry. So I do think more people want to do that. We do a lot of work wholesale. So we do a lot of work in grocery, do a lot of work with Costco. And our food service business took a massive hit during COVID because, people weren't, going out as much to restaurants. And so, if you kind of break it into different categories, I think a consumer, if we can speak directly to a consumer, then those people are a bit different than, mass market grocery, because we have to convince a buyer in a grocery store that, our product is worth this because of all of these pieces. It's a different conversation. Mind you, their customers might want to do it. And there are some grocery banners that are appreciating B Corp now. So it is increasing. And I think the awareness is there, but there are other challenges. And I would say people don't have as much money to spend. So, okay, well, I can buy this or this, and maybe I'm going to have to buy this now. I'd love to buy this, but I can't afford it. So this is sort of where the challenge comes in again with, it's always a moving target, with, where things are at, and say nothing's easy. And, I was just reading an article this morning in a coffee trade journal about, they're talking about nitrogen fertilizer, which is, unfortunately very common in agriculture. But they're talking specifically about coffee and the challenges with supply, because of the war in the Ukraine, and fertilizer, any fuel-based product is increasing. But it was talking about, the challenge with coffee farmers, because they're often farmers. This is even, they're producing their product below production costs. And then, so one thing about, so they have to buy the fertilizer, but even using the fertilizer is not healthy for the soil, because, the whole thing with any kind of agriculture is soil health. Yeah. But a lot of people don't get that. So, but the article was really good talking about that and saying that, if people sort of practice soil health, organic, regenerative agriculture, then you don't have these issues. So it was just a bit of it wasn't new news to me at all. But it was kind of, okay, here's another good message of the importance of dealing with, even if it's not certified organic, as long as you're dealing with proper soil health, then that is something that's majorly important, and not relying on a synthetic input.
Yeah.
So,
anything, supported by more the Joel Salatin model. I don't know if you saw the film Biggest Little Farm. Littlest Big Farm.
Yeah.
So good, right? And it goes really into like what it is to really build a regenerative soil and ecosystem, and how hard it is. Yeah.
Well, we actually deal with a couple of farmers that, they're biodynamic practices. So it's regenerative agriculture, just, wrapped in a different name. But that's a lot of what it is. And, they do incredibly well, and the soil is good, and so all that stuff. But yeah, the Joel Salatin model, those regenerative agriculture practices are so important. And so I think there's more and more awareness of that to consumers, and that's kind of also where we are leaning. Is, although it's, our product is coffee, it's sort of, or more of our mission is about trying to more people understand the importance of the right kind of agriculture and local agriculture and all of that. So coffee is kind of like our vehicle to help finance the mission.
Yeah. And a story to tell. I mean, clearly. Yeah. I have a bit of a tangent here, but I'm very curious, just both Robbyn and Mickey, what it's been like to work together and be also, partners and married. So what has that been like? Running a business together, highs and lows, working in at home, right?
I'll let Robbyn start.
Well, in the beginning, I was 24/7 part of the company for, I think, the first 5 years, totally building the company, building our cafe, doing trade shows and all of that. And then started weaning myself out a bit, because I also do dance and teaching dance in the community, and travel some for dance. However, I still was was there. And then Mickey's entrepreneurship, which I am not an entrepreneur. He just kept having more and more projects on the go. And so I slowly stepped further and further out of actually the running of the company. And so now I'm pretty much, I don't want to say consultant, but, ideas to go back and forth with our cafe reopened not too long ago. So, that's going, and just the people that work there at Salt Spring Coffee Cafe know that I'm co-owner, and just go in and ask them how they are. And so I'm there, but I'm not running it anymore. So that was a big transition. I was kind of relieved to retire from dance and start this whole exciting business. And I love the travel to the coffee country, Salt Spring Coffee, just going there and doing little tastings with the farmers and even some competitions. And so I love that side of it. I love the coffee itself. I love working with the people. It's the business side that just is out of my arena. So, yeah.
And who was more of the coffee snob when you two met?
Robbyn always has been.
Except I drink decaf mostly now. So I'm waiting for Salt Spring Coffee to create a lighter roasted decaf. However,
please. I am a decaf person too, 100%. A light roast decaf. Are you kidding me? It's like it took forever to get a craft non-alcoholic beer in the wild, and similarly, decaf coffees have been terrible for so long.
We got 2 people that want it, so we'll work on that.
Okay, and so we have Salt Spring Coffee does have one, and it's really good. It's darker roast, so people love it for that. And when it's made through the espresso machine, it has lots of full body and flavor.
Speaking of decaf, I mean, it is something that we've wanted to do for a while. I think we will get there as actually highlighting more kinds of decaf. But part of the problem is we only do organic coffee, so we can only roast organic coffee. Otherwise, it's a huge challenge with our production. So there's limited supply of anything kind of really exciting. But we do want to sort of, and this would be through our website, because we can't put it into the grocery channel. It's just too difficult. But we would like to see about having, a rotation of some exciting decafs. So if we know people that are there, we could, be part of it. So it is on the plan to do it, not necessarily, not immediately, because there's always so many other things to do. But it would be good, because I do know that people do appreciate it, and they're, Swiss Water, when we get it, they do an amazing job. So we are hoping to get some more varietals of decaf on the go. But just getting back to, our working together. I mean, yes, Robbyn and I did a lot in the early stages, and we basically built the initial supply chain of green beans and did a tremendous amount of traveling together, various parts of the world, and building those early relationships, which are now still there and quite strong. And, Robbyn's always been, part of the DNA of the company, and she gets to hear me, comment. I try to only bring high level stuff to her, not all the nuances, but sometimes the grumbling ends up by being some of the little things, and I have to kind of catch myself. But, a lot of it is just really the DNA of who we are. And, it's important that, those values are there. And I say we've never swayed away from those. And I think it's quite key. And also being a family-owned company for 26 years is also something to be proud of.
100%.
And not very common, because so many of our, direct competitions they're sold to somebody, and so
the grandkids are so proud of their grandparents, right? They're so excited to know the realization. You and Papu, he's called Papu, and I'm Abuela. Papu, you and Papu own Salt Spring Coffee. They're like, the realization comes in their mind, they're so excited.
Interesting, I guess, for me too, because I sort of grew up, a BC boy, and, always kind of, rural, that, a lot of these things that we do, I think they're important, and I'm never going to really change that. I spent a lot of time traveling around the world, and, I can survive in urban environment, but it's not my go-to. So I do, I think it's important too, that try to get, people understand, this is real, we're doing it, this is why we do it, and sort of, authenticity. So we are working more on trying to get that message out there. And to be, quite honest too, we had an incredible upset challenge like in 2008 when we were trying to reestablish a new home on Salt Spring for the company. And, we bought a piece of land, applied for rezoning so we could build, we called it sort of our green dream facility building, and had this incredible proposal set up. So we bought the land, went through a rezoning application with the local Islands Trust, and they ended up by rejecting our proposal after 18 months of a process. So we were forced to have to leave Salt Spring. As a business, we still have always lived here. And then I spent about 9 months trying to find a new home in Vancouver area and landed on a place in Richmond. So that was 2010 that we got this new piece. So between the rezoning application, the trying to find a new home and everything, that was like a 2-year process. So it's actually taken us quite a while to kind of recover from that. It was, it was 11 years ago in October that happened. So it took a good 10 years to kind of finally get grounded again. So a lot of these extra things we would like to do, want to do, haven't been able to do because we just are trying to keep the wheels on. And also the 2008 recession came along. It's like, oh man, this is bad timing.
Good timing, yeah.
So we've survived a lot, as well. But it just, so wanting to do all of these good things, but we'd like to, but we have to park it because this is important, But I guess I keep getting back to we've survived a lot and there's still lots of work to do. So now, we've got a really great team of people. We actually have somebody on our team we call her a care manager. So she takes care of all of our audits, certifications. She's sort of leading our B Corp movement right now too. And we have a goal of being 150 score B Corp by 2026, I think. Can't remember the actual date. But so we have she's put together a whole plan of what we need to do to achieve it. So we have this very high level goal about how we want to achieve that. And it's all broken down into year by year, category by category, what we need to do to achieve those goals. So those are some things I think we can finally start to accomplish because we have a team that finally gets it. So we had to clear away a lot of the clutter internally as well and get everybody on side. So that's just happening now as well. So, that is still our driver, but hopefully along the way of that, consumers and customers will understand and appreciate that, because I do still feel that's a challenge. So to achieve these goals, it doesn't come free, so we have to invest in that. And I kind of go, why do we want to bother doing that? But I think, we've been trying, we've been change agents for 26 years and we're not going to stop now. So I'm hopeful that someday, more people will start to do this and consumers will get it and they'll actually pay the money it's worth. And so that's ultimately the goal, because, we give up margin to do this, honestly.
Yep.
All the time. And,
paying,
and then,
paying living wages, sourcing better products, deciding to use non-toxic resources. I mean, the whole thing, right? It costs you guys margin and you're competing with other people that don't have those same values. Yeah.
And then, if you roll back too, it's the same thing like with organic food in the early days. I mean, there's a whole core group of people that were fighting hard to get recognition, well, us included, to get people to recognize organic coffee going into grocery stores. And I literally remember some buyers saying, what is this organic shit? I can't sell that. And then now look at it, the shelves are full. But 25 years ago, that was the comment from buyers.
Yeah.
So that's organic product, organic food, and then fair trade became recognized, and I'm sure B Corp will be the same. But along the way, also what happens is the big players realize, oh, there's actually some money to be made in this. We're going to step into this. So then they start lobbying for lower standards so they can compete more. And then, so then we have to start competing with the big guys, so that's another piece that happens, and it's actually starting to happen a little bit with B Corp too. So it's always an uphill battle from that regard, but the thing is too, I mean, that's sort of selfishly, but unselfishly doing this for the right reasons, and hopefully more people will do it, and it's going to benefit more people and not necessarily stakeholders or shareholders of large companies that are going to make more money. But that's a whole other conversation I don't want to get into right now.
I'm ready for you to get feisty here, Mickey. I'm ready for the soapbox.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it comes from a real place, and certainly, as I said, I'm not a real statistics kind of number percentage guy, but I certainly keep my ear to the ground on what's going on and what I believe in. And
yep,
it's gotten us this far, and, I'm sure it'll continue.
I'm sure too. So I have a question for you. So I would agree that we're in this application process, um, and the brand recognition of B Corp isn't there. Most people I talk to, I still have to explain it to them what it
Yeah.
is. So you're not
Mhm.
getting the marketing benefit. Um, so why do you do it? Because you've already got it in your genes. You're doing it by default. You were B Corp before B Corp was a B Corp. Um, what do you feel? Is it the fact that it provides the accountability of the framework to get you to 150? It's like a training plan you got to put together with that.
Yeah, well, part of it is to kind of hope something, for people to rally around, that
Yep.
we've got, there is a structure, there's
Yep.
an audit process. It's very rigorous. So it keeps us, with a plan that we can follow. Otherwise, we'd have to create all of that.
True.
So, it is true. Like I said earlier, we were kind of waiting for somebody to, for something like B Corp to come along because we were already doing a lot of it. But it certainly is the accountability. I mean, it's like, and I think more and more, I'll tell you, to me, the ultimate goal is that when, financial institutions or government, start asking for these kind of things. And the other thing
Yeah.
I find, probably more from a bank even, because what happens is that, we spend, all whatever the money you spend on annually on any certification or good deeds, whatever it might be, it's just an expense. So it goes against your P&L and your
Yeah.
profitability. I will. This would be a day to celebrate when it can be an asset on your balance sheet. I'd like to see a line on a balance sheet
Oh,
that
that's cool.
says that, right? And
Very
what
cool.
you're doing is what you're spending is actually adding to, it's kind of called goodwill, sort of in a
Yep.
rough term, but goodwill can be anything. It could, but there needs to be, I don't know what you want to call it, a line on the balance sheet, like a carrying line or a sustainability, whatever term you want to use. But any money that you spend towards these things that actually are going to, change the world should be on a balance sheet, and then you get better recognition for it. That's the day to celebrate.
Amen to
And there's
that.
other ones, that are there, and but once again, I mean, I've read some things lately about some very large companies that are getting all this recognition. I mean, they're some of the worst companies in the world, but one of their divisions is doing something that they've able to get, a B Corp status or, recognition for, the work they're doing. But meanwhile, the last 4 decades, they've been, doing all this horrible work. So I have serious concern about that.
Yeah, not to shit on Evian water, but them being certified as a B Corp when they're inherently an unsustainable business model of plastic water bottles.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
As one example.
as
I
an
mean, there
example.
are other ones too that are coming up lately. Yeah.
Yeah, although I've also heard that B Lab is making some changes there to make a certain minimum requirement of certificate. So you can't get too many points in one arena that offset kind of a minimum threshold required in other areas, which I think is a great adaptation. You pushed on them in 2010 to improve, and I think that now they're victims of their success, and they have they're being pushed on to improve again to make sure that charlatans can't be in there degrading the value of the brand.
Yeah, but also, so if their goal, they could do a campaign membership drive. So every time, they increase their membership, it's more revenue to them. So it's kind of like, what is really the goal? Is the goal to actually get more members, to get more revenue, or is to actually really kind of make change happen?
More impact.
So, I mean, have they lost sight of really what it is? I don't know. I mean, I'm just wondering. I've been a little bit distant for the last few years because, we're doing it, and we've got this woman that takes care of it for us, and we update, and she just presented us with our plan for the next 5 years, to reach these goals, and it's great, and a lot of people in the company really want to do it, so I want to support all of that. And I still think it's for the right reasons, but it takes a lot of work. And I'm also hopeful that more consumers will get it. but you've got to get like banks and governments to get it. So as an example, if you wanted to bid on a contract with a level of government, but this is probably really kind of pretty hopeful thinking, but then you should, you want to be one of these statuses, because then, but money talks. And, when we don't have millions of dollars at our disposal to be able to buy or sell the contract, it's difficult.
Yeah, I think though, Mickey, I see it at least here, and I'm sure it's all over, the getting points for social procurement or being a social enterprise or purpose driven is already taking its roots. Whether it gets to B Corp, I don't know about that, but I do think people are recognizing purpose driven organizations and wanting to support that in their communities, hopefully for all the right reasons.
Yeah.
I have a question for both of you. So we've talked a lot about the impact that your company is making. How would you say, and I'll let whoever wants to go first here go first, running, driving, working to the bone to create a purpose-driven company has changed you as an individual? We've talked about the org. How about you as an individual? How have you changed through this journey?
I'll let Robbyn go if you want, Robbyn, or I can if you like.
Well, understanding business more. Like I said, that isn't my arena so much. Also, we're in a community here, and we have our cafe in town, and it was closed for a few years just for recalculating, and then it opened right. We renovated and opened just as COVID hit, so that was a challenge. But yeah, being more part of the community where we live and how important that is. And so that's a change. However, I was in the community with dance before we started our company. But yeah, and certainly the experience, like I said, traveling, being right there with the farmers to appreciate the work that goes in and the struggles that they go through. So it was a dream of mine to be able to go travel to smaller places in the world to see the people that live differently than I do or we do. So being able to do that just bred my understanding of we're so entitled here as white people as well in North America, and to consider the larger world. So being able to actually experience it really gave me a wider sense and understanding, and every day to consider the fact that we're all one world.
Well, if we can get that message out,
it can be
Robbyn.
Emotional,
Yeah, for sure.
Of the suffering and then also going to those places just to see the happiness and the friendliness of people there when we would go and visit, and how they could just appreciate life at the smallest levels. They didn't need big fancy toys and to just enjoy the day, enjoy the moment.
You mean my car? The size of my car is not going to make me happier, Robbyn? You're killing me here. Killing me.
No, it's what model of Tesla you have that counts.
Thank you, Mickey. Need to
how
flex
long it takes to charge it.
Seriously. How about you, Mickey? How have you changed
the
over this time?
question was about how all of this has affected us personally or changed.
Correct.
Yeah.
How have you changed as a person by living this purpose life?
Well, I guess I'd say it's enabled me to continue on how, as I mentioned earlier, sort of how I was influenced early in life. And I realized that a lot of those things that I experienced, or Rob and I experienced in those early days, that hasn't changed. It's kind of like, the world is finally caught up. And, it's interesting also, just on another thing, back in the day of, people, taking LSD and sort of expanding their minds, and, really, I think it was a big change in society at the time. Well, now, LSD and psychedelics are becoming,
they're back.
But I think it's absolutely awesome. The same, like with cannabis, you could take it or leave it, but we made a comment earlier about that, and I've always been a strong believer in cannabis, and it's in many forms, and so I think that what I'm getting at is all the things that I believed and we believed in earlier are still there, and sometimes it's coming back again. And I think because people have been so many challenges, but sort of that strong movement from the 60s and 70s had such a big influence and sort of proving. I mean, have you seen Fabulous Fungi by any chance?
Yes.
So good.
Yeah.
Jeremy and I
there
have
you
talked
go.
about this.
When he took that big dose of psilocybin and he stopped stuttering. I mean, holy shit, how about that? So there's so many amazing things in there sort of from a natural perspective. And that's kind of what it is for Robbyn and I, is that, we lead a pretty clean life, and just so never believed in any, alterations to things like, Teflon pans or anything like that. So I think what it is for me is that it's sort of carrying on this mission for the last 50 years. And, more and more, this is becoming how important it is. And look at how the state of the world is. And because it's been sort of taken over by, the wrong kind of people and the wrong direction, and sort of totally driven by money and shareholder and all of that. So that's a little bit in our way of rebellion, although we haven't been sort of like out on the front line as of a protest, with flagging, with big banners and flags. We've been in the background kind of doing this work. So I think for me, that's never really changed. In fact, it gets better and clearer to me that the mission we've been on for 50 years actually has an impact. So that's kind of for me where it's gone, is that, we've been on the right path for 50 years.
100%. So am I hearing there might be a dark roast psilocybin on the in the product delivery here soon?
Who knows? There's actually a conference I just heard about this morning. It's in Victoria that I might go to, because a guy I've known for years too he's got quite involved. He actually was one of the very early people with medical cannabis designation because of his health. And he actually has a PhD now in something. I'm not sure what it was, but he was very early on in some of the cannabis growing legally. He was one of the first companies to get a license in Canada, and he's since moved on. Now he's into psychedelics, and leading the way. So anyway, I've always been pretty intrigued, but now that it's kind of more front row, I want to find out more what's going on.
Yeah, there seems to be some overlap between psychedelics and purpose-driven companies. Not a direct, but I can find a lot more purpose-driven entrepreneurs at Burning Man or Victoria Association of Psychedelic Studies than I can at some financial conference or something. Well,
yeah, it is. And I think because we're kind of from that generation, and experimented a lot with things, that I realized that. Yeah, this, it did a big thing, I mean, just even looking at what hemp can do, as a product, let alone the cannabis, side of things, or the THC, just as a plant, what it can do, So there's a lot of really cool things, that are there. And, I mean, I grew up with or mixed farming, the importance of mixed farming, like what Joe Flatten does as well. All that stuff, believed in all that forever. And I guess because I've been around long enough and seen enough happening, I kind of feel like I've got a lot to share too with people, especially some of the younger generation, a lot of young people that work for us. So trying to kind of also lead by somewhat of an example. That's another piece. And,
100%. So that's where I was going to go next. And I know that we're coming up on time, but not everybody got the benefit of growing up 60s, 70s counterculture. And so there is this, mentorship need from folks like you to provide that. So, how do entrepreneurs in their young 20s now get that didn't come from that background, and they're just getting exposed to purpose-driven companies and this whole arena? That's a different starting point, right? Than growing up in it and having it be just part of a core value. So, would love to hear if you have any thoughts on how to better support kind of this next generation to follow the footsteps. And maybe there's enough of a critical mass with B Corp and so on that there's other reasons to do it. But would love to hear any thoughts you have about that.
Yeah, well, one thing about is just, try to be honest, sincere, curious, and do a lot of research, ask a lot of questions. And certainly if somebody can find a mentor, it would be good. I mean, I had a mentor early in my life, not necessarily about, core values, but I certainly learned a lot of different things about life's lessons and, some business and fixing machinery and, being, independent and self-sufficient. So I think that's part of it. And it doesn't necessarily mean just, watching YouTube videos how to do something. You really
Yeah.
have to get in there and kind of get your hands dirty. But, and really, have certainly a passion, whatever it might be, you got to have that passion instead of just sort of, a business plan, because so many business plans can fail. And you look at, there's so many examples of, somebody could raise millions of dollars, or billions of dollars and it crashes. Like WeWork is a perfect example, had a great spin on something, got billions of dollars, and then, then it crashed.
Mhm.
So, like that's false. And I think a lot of those kind of things are really the wrong approach to business. And, I think even that's showing up lately too, that, Silicon Valley isn't necessarily the angel it used to be. But I think a lot of those things have just, have the wrong message. So I think just really getting, being really curious and finding something you're truly passionate about, and not just, how much money you can make or how much, I think that's quite key. Money's important, but it can't be the only driver. Passion's got to be a big part, and curiosity.
100%.
Yeah.
We are coming up on time here, and I want to respect both of your time. I have maybe one last question. Not all of our listeners are B Corps, or most of them are, but if you had any one policy you've put in place that you think, B Corp or not, every organization should have in place, whether it be for the planet or your people or you name it, is there one you think that every organization should have in place?
Well, I would think just, it's really about being respectful of sort of everybody and everything, and just sort of be open-minded, and, just don't, it could be empathy, whatever you want to call it. But I think just sort of being open, and don't make a quick judgment until you actually know a bit more, because there's so many things that people, they have a challenge, or there's a certain reason why something is a certain way. So, don't be so quick to judge, I would think. And, I know I've certainly been practicing that more lately, and try to be way more, have way more empathy for people and things, because it's so, you never know what the challenges people have got. So I think just sort of be a bit more, but yeah, I think that would be kind of it for me. Just, be more caring and open-minded.
That's awesome. How about you, Robbyn? Any thoughts on that?
Establishing open pathways of communication so that people feel involved in the decision making and why things change. If something changes, suddenly some folks have issues with that. So yeah, just that open like you're saying, Mickey, the open communication and taking time to listen, that we establish that, or that it is worked on being established, or it is established in our company. But that's a very important thing to have in all companies, because we're all people. And,
Yep.
Why are we all here together now? Establish we're here for a reason. Who
We
knows
are.
what it is sometimes, but we're all human.
Yeah, remembering that alone probably be a pretty good start to allowing for a little more grace in our human interactions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there's been so much that have come out lately that you really don't know about what people's challenges they have, or who they are, or what got them to where they are. And
Yeah.
I remember years ago that once growing up in New Westminster, there was Essendale, which was a mentally challenged hospital way out in the Fraser Valley. And many years ago, the government, they just opened the doors and they pushed people on the street. So all, it was sort of part of the crisis, a lot of what happened downtown East Side, but these people are clinically mentally challenged, and they were put out there. So then, then it creates a whole other thing. Sometimes, it is a mechanical thing that they've got. Sometimes it could be family abuse or whatever it might be. So, it's very difficult to judge people on their first appearance. And there's a lot of, you got to know the backstory. So once again, I could go on for, a whole other conversation about those kind of things, but I think it's quite key, just, caring for people and being open and, communicate well and have some good empathy is, I think everybody needs that.
Amen. Before we go, is there anything you'd love to share? Any exciting things going on or stuff we didn't cover you would have loved to share with the listeners?
I feel like I just want to thank you for having us. That's my final.
Oh my God. Our pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. I know it's once a lot of the research reading that I've been doing lately, and it, once again, it hasn't really changed from my past, but just to the importance of that is, we're in a serious place for, supply chain, food shortages, a lot of that. And, if people really start only depending on going to the grocery store and all of that, that could be a challenge. So I really would encourage people to find local producers. If you become part of a CSA program, community supported agriculture, really work on that and work with local producers of food, because they're the ones that are going to really help us get through this. Supply chains coming from California or Mexico or other parts of the world, they are going to be compromised and they're going to cost a lot more money. So if you want to spend your money, if you spend it locally, it's going to spin around the community a lot more. And honestly, I think those good, hardworking local farmers are going to actually help us get through this. So I think that's quite important that people focus on that.
Great
Love
message.
It. And learn to grow food.
That too. That too. But if you can't do it, fine. And there are and the thing with CSA too is that with the beauty about that too, that if they sign up to that, then the farmers know they have a guaranteed sale. And then they put it in the box, because sometimes, you grow, how much shall I grow? I grow too much, and it goes to weight. But this way they actually they know what they're going to sell and they get paid in advance. It really helps the farmer a lot to do it that way.
That's awesome. Can't speak for Jeremy because I'm not sure he had as good a time as I did, but we really wanted to thank you, just kidding, for taking the time, and doing our homework, listening to both of your journey and doing our homework, and, being cool before it was cool to be cool is pretty awesome. To see that you've been doing this without the recognition and just doing the right thing because it's the right thing is very inspiring. So I want to thank you a ton for being here today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'll echo. And it's great to meet you. And I'm sure I will run into both of you on Salt Spring. It's a small enough community. I'll definitely be at Salt Spring Coffee.
Right. Come to our cafe.
100%.
Ganges, center of Ganges, Salt Spring Island.
Will do.